The night was quiet. Too quiet. A single car rolled down the empty street, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Inside, someone carried a secret, one that would soon unravel into a chilling mystery. What happened next would leave detectives puzzled for years. Was it a crime of passion or a carefully planned act of deception? As the evidence unfolded, the truth became even harder to believe. How could someone so unsuspecting hide something so sinister? Stay with me as we dive deep into a case that proves not everything is as it seems. Let's uncover the shocking details together. Mick Philpott was once known in Britain for his controversial lifestyle, but he became infamous for one of the most horrifying crimes in modern UK history. A man who lived off government benefits while controlling multiple women. His greed and manipulation ultimately led to a devastating fire that claimed the lives of 6 innocent children. This is the shocking story of Mick Philpott, a tale of abuse, control, and a twisted plan that ended in tragedy. Born in 1956 in Derby, England, Mick Philpott grew up in a working-class environment. From an early age, he displayed troubling behavior, particularly toward women. As a teenager, his aggressive tendencies escalated, and by adulthood, his relationships were marked by extreme violence and control. One of the earliest recorded incidents of his abuse occurred in the 1970s when he was in a relationship with a young woman named Kim Hill. Philpott subjected her to years of horrific domestic violence. When Kim finally found the courage to leave him, his response was beyond brutal. In a fit of rage, he broke into her home, stabbing her multiple times, leaving her severely wounded. Miraculously, she survived, but the attack nearly killed her.
Stabbed me 27 times and then tried to gut me. You never say no to Mick Philpott. You never ever say no.
For this attempted murder, Philpott received only a short prison sentence. A shocking failure of the justice system that allowed him to continue his abusive ways after his release. Rather than learning from his punishment, he became more manipulative, using charm and control to dominate the women in his life. In the years following his release, Philpott built an unusual and highly controversial household. Living in a council house in Derby, he shared his home with his wife, Mick, and his mistress, Lisa Willis. He fathered children with both women, treating them as possessions rather than partners. Philpott was unemployed and lived entirely off government welfare payments, which increased as he had more children. By the time of his arrest, he had fathered 17 children from multiple women, using them as a source of income. He ruled his home with an iron grip. The women had no financial independence, and he dictated every aspect of their lives, from what they wore to when they could leave the house. His abuse was both physical and psychological, ensuring that those under his control remained completely dependent on him. Despite his disturbing personal life, Philpott reveled in the media attention he received. He appeared on television programs such as The Jeremy Kyle Show and Ann Widcombe versus The Benefits Culture.
That's correct. What is wrong with a man looking after his children? I mean, I'm old-fashioned, I believe the man should be at work, but unfortunately...
Proudly defending his reliance on the welfare system. Rather than showing embarrassment, he portrayed himself as a victim, someone who deserved financial support for his large family. However, those who knew him saw the truth. He was a manipulative, violent man who cared little for anyone but himself. By early 2012, cracks in Philpott's world began to show. Lisa Willis, who had endured years of control and abuse, made a courageous decision. She left him, taking her 5 children with her. This was a devastating blow to Philpott, not because he loved Lisa or the children, but because they were his property in his mind. More importantly, Lisa's departure meant a loss of significant welfare payments. The financial hit enraged Philpott, who saw government benefits as his right rather than assistance for those in need. Determined to get Lisa back, and more crucially, the children, Philpott devised a devious plan. He would set fire to his own home, framing Lisa for arson in the hope that the courts would grant him full custody of the children, restoring his benefits in the process. It was a reckless, heartless scheme, and its consequences would be beyond tragic. In the early hours of May 11, 2012, Mick Philpott, along with his wife Mick and their friend Paul Mosley, executed their horrifying plan. Using petrol, they set fire to their home while their 6 children, Duane, 13, Jade, 10, John, 9, Jack, 8, Jesset, 6, and Jaden, 5, were asleep inside. The idea was to make it appear as though Lisa had committed the crime out of revenge, painting Philpott as a victim. They had planned to stage a dramatic rescue, breaking in through a back window to save the children. However, everything went terribly wrong. The fire spread faster than they had anticipated. Thick black smoke filled the house, making it impossible for the children to escape. As the flames raged, neighbors woke up to the sounds of screaming. Some rushed to help, but it was too late. The fire had taken over the house within minutes. By the time firefighters arrived, the 6 children had already succumbed to smoke inhalation. Despite desperate efforts to revive them, none survived. At first, Philpott played the role of the grieving father. He appeared in front of news cameras, sobbing and pleading for answers. But from the beginning, something seemed off. His behavior was exaggerated, his tears appeared forced, and his statements were filled with contradictions. The police, already skeptical, launched a full-scale investigation. Forensic experts quickly determined that the fire had been started deliberately using petrol. But there were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that the culprit had been inside the house when the fire began. As the investigation continued, Philpott's erratic behavior raised even more suspicions. He showed little genuine grief and even made jokes in private conversations. Hidden police recordings captured shocking moments where he laughed and spoke about media coverage rather than mourning his children. The turning point came when Mered and Mosley cracked under questioning. They confessed that the fire had been planned and that Philpott had orchestrated it all. With their testimonies, the police arrested all 3 and charged them with manslaughter. In 2013, Mick Philpott, Mered Philpott, stood trial for the deaths of the 6 children. The prosecution presented damning evidence, painting Philpott as a manipulative, self-obsessed man who viewed his children as financial assets rather than human beings. Witnesses described his abusive nature, his control over the women in his life, and his obsession with money. The jury watched footage of his bizarre behavior after the fire, his fake grief, his obsession with public perception, and his attempts to frame Lisa Willis. In the end, the jury found all 3 guilty. Mick Philpott received a life sentence with a minimum term of 15 years. Mered and Mosley were each sentenced to 17 years. The judge condemned Philpott as a disturbingly controlling man who had caused unimaginable suffering. The case shocked the nation, sparking debates about welfare dependency, domestic abuse, and the failures of the justice system in dealing with dangerous individuals like Philpott. Many questioned how he had been allowed to manipulate the system for so long, living off benefits while inflicting pain on those around him. In prison, Philpott remains a reviled figure. He has attempted to maintain his innocence, but few believe his claims. Mered, now separated from him, has tried to distance herself from the crime, though the public still holds her responsible. The story of Mick Philpott is a chilling example of how unchecked greed, manipulation, and control can lead to devastating consequences. His obsession with power and money drove him to commit one of the most disturbing crimes in British history. The 6 children who lost their lives that night, Duane, Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, and Jaden, should have had a future. Instead, they became victims of their father's selfish and monstrous actions. Though justice was served, the scars of this case remain. The Philpott fire will always be remembered as a tragic example of what happens when greed and evil go unchecked. Evil doesn't always come in the form of a monster lurking in the dark. Sometimes it hides behind a grieving father's tears, a desperate mother's silence, and a carefully crafted lie. Mick Philpott's story isn't just one of tragedy. It's a chilling reminder of how manipulation, greed, and unchecked control can destroy lives. But what drives a person to sacrifice their own children for personal gain? Could someone like Philpott be stopped before tragedy strikes? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, how many more monsters like him are hiding in plain sight, waiting for their moment to strike? If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe for more chilling true crime stories. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think could have prevented this tragedy? And don't forget to like the video to help more people uncover the truth.